Today we're talking about language in general. And I want to point out that all of the things that we're going to talk about, if you're interested in more lessons and want to know specifics about how to teach a specific lesson to your child, you're going to find that in the skills program, because we're talking specifically about the lessons that are there. Today I'm sort of putting it through a filter of when we're teaching natural environment as parents, when we're out there in the world. But I got to tell you that my son did 5 years of ABA, and he made such tremendous progress, and the lessons that he had, the things that he learned, are the exact same lessons that are in skills, the exact same lessons. And so I can speak with authority that it's what made the difference with my child. That's available to you. And I still use skills now. My son has graduated from his ABA program, but I'm still using skills to target individual things because the progress goes on. And I think I probably will do that forever. Because here's the long and the short of it. There's things in skills that I enjoy working on. When I look, there's things in the executive functions curriculum. Well, there's things in the language curriculum, ending conversation. This is one of the things that I need to work on. We're trying to do a little bit of a format change here and have me not go on so endlessly, but you guys see that I don't know when to stop. And I'm like that in real life too, that in a conversation, I miss cues, I don't give cues, I need to end conversations, I need to be better at it. Well, the lessons there in skills, I'm working on it. We could see, if I'm reinforcing myself enough. You would think I would want a break, so I would stop talking. But I find it very reinforcing to talk to you. So in any case, remember that skills is not just for our kids. These lessons work for all of us. But it is a wonderful thing. But I want to talk today about how we can use these things to just in our natural environment and find teaching opportunities to be able to teach these things in the natural environment. Okay, and all of the different curricula areas that we want to attack with our kids, and skills, there's 8 different curricula areas. It's really wonderful. I can't say that enough. And they have different domains within them. But I wanted to focus on early lessons today. So we see, and you just saw a video about skills, and one of the things I love about it is that you take the assessment and it gives you a pool of activities and says, here's what's appropriate for your child. Now you get to pick. What do you want to do? It also puts it through a filter of what's age appropriate for your child, because we never want to be in a position where we're trying to teach a child an advanced skill and target it in this way. Not that your children can't learn an advanced skill. There are things that my son can do that are appropriate for a 12-year-old. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but my child is behind on a couple of things, and mostly they're tied to visual things. And I shared yesterday that we discovered this last year that he has a visual motor issue. So there are some things like riding a bicycle that he's 8.5, and other kids who are 8.5 that are typically developing can tootle off on their bicycle and don't have a problem. My son's behind there. It is not the end of the world. We'll get there. But if I've got some teaching time, then, he's already reinforced by the things that he does really well and that he's ahead of schedule. I don't need to feed that by giving him tools and toys that he asks for, that he wants that. But if I'm going to spend some teaching time, I want to spend it on catching him up. It just makes a certain amount of sense to me. I can give him some enrichment classes he's about to take a class in construction and do all that. I can feed that in another way, but when I've got the time to teach, I want to work on things that we're behind on. And I encourage you to look at it that way too, because priority number 1 is getting our kids caught up, right? Absolutely. And having them be happy goes hand in hand with that, and they will be happier if they're caught up. All kids. I get an opportunity, I'm an ex-teacher, and I get the opportunity to go in and work in classrooms still sometimes, and you see those kids that are struggling, they know they're behind. And they don't like that feeling. Boy, if I go someplace and I feel completely underprepared and that everybody else is doing something, anxiety. I have a friend who had a master's degree in one thing and decided that it was not the thing that was fulfilling her, that she wanted to go back and get a master's degree in landscaping. Well, she hadn't done whatever the undergraduate component was, so she was having to take a couple of classes to catch up with that while she was taking her master's degree in landscaping. And I remember saying to her, how's it going? And she said, I feel so beaten up because I come home on a daily basis and I feel so underprepared. I'm so overwhelmed. I come home every day and cry because it feels so bad being in these classes with these kids who know all these things, and I'm having to catch up. I hate feeling this way. I'm a smart person, and this is an intelligent person who already has a master's degree in one thing. And I said, my gosh, how can you feel, so it's just stuff you don't know? And she goes, you don't understand when you're there with people who do know it. And I thought, oh yeah, no, I do understand that. We all feel that way. So anytime a child is behind, whether it's due to autism or something else, it's an unpleasant feeling. Let's get those kids caught up, which sometimes means going back to the beginning. This is hard, but if you stop and think about it, that when we're asking a baby to do something, right, we only ask them to do what's age appropriate, and we cut them some slack. We know that they're going to have to learn one thing before they learn the next thing, right? And we don't have expectations that they're going to be able to do it all, we don't hand a 7-month-old baby a manual to a computer and say, you can put that together, go ahead, go for it. We know that there are going to be a whole lot of steps and a whole lot of years leading up to the point where this child, at some point, maybe at age 12, maybe at age 14, we could hand this manual off and they're going to be able to do it. But we know that there's a progression, right? I swear, I think something happens when you have a child with autism and they don't progress, and then you see that they can learn. It turns on this thing in our heads where we think, well, great, now they're just going to get caught up. Right now, with the skills, the typical way that a 4-year-old would, if that's the age that they are, instead of going back to the beginning. We still have to go back to the beginning. We have to fill in the holes of what they didn't learn. What's particularly interesting and intriguing and mysterious and frustrating about autism is that it is like Swiss cheese. The kids pick up some things, and so we think, well, then they might be able to do this, and discover they don't know how to do that. What's great, though, is once you've identified that, and the skills program does that for you, by the way, you can go back in and fill in this hole here at the beginning, and it has an impact on the things that are happening here. And suddenly, there's a leap. So don't be afraid. Don't get caught up in this idea of, wait a second, it's telling me that I need to go back and teach something that's appropriate for a 1-year-old and my child is 5. Yeah, it's a bummer. There's an emotional response. Call me up. We can talk about it. We can cry through it together. But then you got to get on with the business of doing it. There's just no two ways about it. And believe me, I did. I cried about it and said, not helpful. You can do it for 10 minutes, get it cleared out, and then let's teach it, right? Because we want the progress. So as we take a look here, let's start with the early ones. And next week we'll talk about ones a little later on. But for a child who isn't speaking, and it can be that the child is nonverbal or the child is nonvocal. And let's just take a break for just 1 second to distinguish between the two different things. When we say that a child is nonverbal, they are not using any sound or any gesture or any motion in order to communicate. When they're truly nonverbal, they are not communicating on any level. There's no eye contact to communicate. There's no grunting to communicate. There's no gesture to communicate. That's truly nonverbal. When we say that a child is nonvocal, that means they're not grunting or making any sound in order to communicate. So really important distinctions there, that even going, that's vocal, right? And the good news is that means the child can produce sound. And we're going to start in a specific place with that child. A lot of our children very early in come in and they are nonverbal or very close to it. My son was able to vocally still produce 5 sounds when we started 5 words, but he didn't use them purposefully. He didn't gesture, and he didn't communicate his needs at all when we started out. And now he's completely verbal vocal. Ooh, that boy can talk your leg off. And that's a good thing, right? It can be frustrating sometimes, but I am very grateful. He can talk my leg off. When Grandma comes to visit, we pick her up at the airport, and and she says, boy, he got that talking thing, didn't he? Still doesn't love to talk on the phone. It's not as reinforcing to him, but woo, face to face, he can talk your leg off. So know that you can get there, okay? But we're going to start out with some very early things. We've talked before about the verbal operants and how we teach things in terms of echoic, getting a child to echo a sound. We teach things in terms of matching. Now that's a great way to start out, because whether the child is verbal or vocal, we can help them to get more verbal by doing matching. Put with same is a great lesson that we can begin to teach almost anything. That we will work on receptively understanding things. We will work on expressively understanding words. There's manding and tacting and intraverbals, all these wonderful verbal operants that we will work on so that our children get a global language. Now, if I just lost you, don't worry. These are all jargon terms that we will make friends with it, and it'll all start to make sense, and you don't need to understand it to talk about what we're talking about right now, because we're just talking about natural environment and how we can carry these lessons out in the natural environment in lots of different ways. So, and we do anyway, a lot of these. And you may say to me, but I tried this stuff in the natural environment and it didn't work. My child didn't pick it up. Because usually, look at body parts. This is something that a typically developing child picks it up in the natural environment. We do contrive different things, but it's considered natural environment with a child when we're saying things like touch your nose, right? Those kinds of things. And if you're feeling frustrated and feeling like, but my child didn't learn it that way, I want you to know that all of our kids, yes, that's true. They didn't learn in that way. But once we start with DTT, and I do think that that's the first component of it, is starting with a DTT where we would set up a circumstance, sit with the child and say, touch your nose, and we would prompt them through it, right? So we're going to teach it to them in that way. And then once they're able to do it, they get reinforcement for it. That's how we pave the way so that we can do it in the natural environment. But I got to remind you that we start with the DTT, but we need to go back and do it with the natural environment. We can't say, oh, well, then they learned it. We got to go back and do the same things we would have done had our child been typically developing. We have to make it fun. You got to get on the floor or on the couch or on the bed and get the sillies and the giggles and do all the things and touch your nose and everybody screeching and saying, yay, you did it. And having grandma do it, and having your friend from down the street say to your child, do you know where your nose is? Where is your nose? Instead of touch your nose, right? Because this is how we do it with a typical child. Where is your nose? Where did it go? I don't see it. All those things. Maybe taking a mirror. Some of you have written in and said that you do this on your phones, that you can do the mirror. There's an app that you can do a mirror on your phone so that they can see themselves. And so you can say, where is the nose on, Jacob? Where is Jacob? And you can touch it on the screen and then touch it on them so they get this awareness of very reinforcing. Very reinforcing. And again, we can do it in a very natural environment, that you're in line at the grocery store and the child is sitting there in the grocery cart, and what are your choices, right? You can be stressing about the things that are in the aisles and getting ready for the tantrum and the meltdown, or you can say, what can we be doing here? We could be working on body parts and make it fun. It's got to be fun. If it's work, they're not going to want to do it. And so it can be that you tickle whatever part they find. So where are your ears? And then you tickle the ear as the reinforcement. Where's your hair? And then you tickle their head. Where's your belly? Tickle the belly, right? It makes it really fun to be on an outing with your child. Now, our expectation, again, I got to go back to this, our expectation is not that your child just gets this from you because they won't. There's got to be some of that DTT in the beginning, and I want to remind you that what that does is it gives your child a bunch of opportunities to get it right, and it gives your child this very structured thing. I say this, you do this, you get the reward. And that's the difference. That sets the child up for wanting to learn. I do this, you do this, you get the reward. And then I'm going to give you another chance. I say this, you do this, you get the reward. I say this, you do this, we get the reward. It's very contrived, but it gets the child excited to learn. But if all we ever did was that, our child would not have the full rich life that we want them to have. So we got to have that component in, then we go out into the natural environment. Your child needs to be able to know where their nose is at home, but they need to know where it is at the grocery store. And this is going to help them, because if you stop and think about all the sensory things going on in the grocery store, there's going to be even more sensory things going on when they get to kindergarten. Kindergarten is pretty sensory intensive, right? So your child needs to be able to know where their nose is, regardless of if mom is saying, or Aunt Sally is saying, or Uncle Bill is saying it, or the preschool teacher is saying it, or a kid is saying it, or the doctor is saying it, all these different circumstances. And it can be fun, right? So we absolutely can take body parts out into the natural environment. We can go over it in the bath, right? As you're washing the body part. You can have your washcloth ready with the soap. Some of you I know have puppets that are the washcloths and say, where are your fingers? And then the puppet can go, washing the fingers, washing the fingers, washing the fingers. Where are your toes? And the child's going to love this, unless they're frightened. It's not right for everybody. So some kids this won't work, but say, where are your toes? Oh, there's where your toes are. Oh, the puppet's washing your toes. Where's your hair? Oh, the puppet's washing your hair. Right? We make it fun. We talked a little bit about echoics. Echoics is one of the verbal operants, and a lot of the ways that we're, when we're teaching early lessons, we want to get the child making sounds and being rewarded by it. Again, there's a DTT component of this. By the way, all of these lessons in skills, they're available to you. Same lessons my son had. So we're getting the child to echo, and in the beginning, we're just getting them to echo sounds because what we want to get to is them being reinforced. I just want to say that 1,000 times. If we have an expectation, I've shared with you guys, I'm just going to share a moment of a teeny bit of a frustration. Because we don't get this in the beginning, right? And my son, I mentioned to you the other day that he's having trouble doing the steps. He just wants to finish. They give him a math question, like a division problem, and he goes, well, the answer is this. But they want them to do the steps. He doesn't want to do the steps. The steps are boring. I can do it without the steps. I can do it without the paper. Why would I want to do that? And I keep reminding him, when they send the shuttle into space, everybody has to check their math work and they have to show their work, right? So the rocket engineers have to show their work. You're going to have to make friends with the steps. But I got to make it reinforcing to him now. He doesn't want to think about when he's 38 and working at NASA. Do any of us, right? It's got to be reinforcing now. So we instituted this new policy. I made some stickers that said I did the steps, and I said to him, I'm going to pay you $1. Every time you do the steps at school, I'm going to pay you $1. And I sent this off to school and told the teacher, if he does the steps, put the sticker on him. I want the other students to see. It's a thing of pride. He did it. I'll trade it for $1 when I pick him up at the gate. And so we've been a couple of days now, and the first day they didn't do the steps. I was like, I built up all this excitement around, you're going to do the steps, you're going to get $1, right? But they didn't work on anything that required the steps. Well, I can't control that, right? So then the next day I said, he still didn't get any stickers for it, and she was like, no, he really wasn't doing the steps enough, and so he didn't get the sticker. And then yesterday I'm there at the gate and I said, still no stickers? What? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got to up the ante, the $1, there was a delay, so it's not as reinforcing. I got to take him to the store and say, here's the $8 toy, and I'm going to put it on the shelf at home. I paid for it. You don't get to buy it until you got 8 of these things, right? I'm thinking in my head, I got to do all these things. But you got to look at it, and I don't get to look at it from all angles. And I said to her, really? He's still not doing it? I had a conversation with him. I thought, I'm going to have to change this. And she said, well, he did it on the paper, but he didn't do it on the whiteboard. And I said, wait a minute, he did do the steps on one thing? And she goes, yeah, but, it's for the whole day, right? And I was like, no, No, anytime he does the steps, I don't care if he comes home with 7 of them. She goes, well, that's going to get expensive. I said, it's going to be a lot more expensive if he doesn't learn how to do the steps. I'll break the piggy bank. If he does it on the paper and you give him the sticker and he knows he's going to get a buck, then he's going to want to do it on the whiteboard. And he may not do it today, but he'll do it tomorrow. I'll make sure that he does. But she was like, oh, I thought it was for the whole day. When we're teaching something in the beginning, we got to immediately reinforce it, right? And I know I have to be reminded on that on a daily basis. And it reminds me I got to be clear. Evelyn Gould always tells us the instructions have to be clear so that a complete stranger could come in and do it. And I forget. But anyway, we have to reinforce immediately, right? So, and with echoics, when we reinforce, we're going to reinforce an approximation. Because if we're trying to get the child in the beginning to echo what we have said, if the child makes a reinforce. You will get to the point where becomes ba or pa or whatever, which then becomes papa or mama or bubbles or whatever. You'll get there if you reinforce along the way. So you're going to reinforce any approximation. So if you say to the child, say ba, and they say reinforce. Reinforce, that can be shaped. Right? But we always want to get there immediately with the reinforcement. And for echoics, if it's something that you're working on and you're working on it in a DTT fashion, the NET component of this is that you can be doing this wherever you are. We've shared before that there is an app on the phone, and I think it's something like Charlie Says. I'll look it up during the break. I got 2 things to look up. I got to get you that website for the blog with the articles. I'm making myself notes here. And Charlie Speaks. In any case, what it does is it's like a mini tape recorder. So you can do this on your phone, and I believe it's 99 cents. I don't know if it's just for iPhones, though, but parents rave to me about this, getting their kids to make sounds. You push the button, and you can say whatever. It records it, and then it gives you a bunch of buttons, and you can manipulate how it sounds. So you can make it sound really high-pitched or really low, or make it sound tinny. And what it does is it reinforces the child making sound. It's so exciting to them that I've heard parents who said, my child has never made a sound, and 5 minutes into using this app, my child was making all kinds of sounds. What a great thing, and it teaches technology as well. So we can do echoics in a lot of different ways, even just being silly. My son loves to make noises, even now, and he loves it if he makes a noise and I parrot it back. So I put him in charge of that, and we'll be in the car, and he'll go blip, and I go blip. I don't know why. He's 8.5. He still loves that. So lots of different things that we can do. And if we're on a long car trip and the DS is dead, believe me, we pull these things out because it keeps us occupied, but it's a learning moment too.